Hi, this is Natalie Aho, and I wanted to talk with you about content governance, or in other words, how do you manage all of the content that will go on your website for your college? I'm going to be referencing information from the blog series, The Minimalist Approach to Content Governance. So why do we need a strategy for managing content? Basically, having some sort of strategy will, one, improve your website, which is your goal, and two, not make it a burden for you, the one inputting all of the content on the website. We want to make your website easier for someone to search and easy for someone to navigate, and that's what having content governance will do. We're going to be looking at 4 stages of thinking about how to manage your content. And we'll keep seeing this word, metadata, so I wanted to go ahead and reference it for you now. This phrase is similar to what you would put on a card catalog in the library. When we're referring to web pages, we can use something called a meta tags, and it's basically a place where we can put a description and keywords that won't show up on the website when you look at the page, but will let us search that site and find information that we might need. Certainly when we run reports or when we're perusing through the coding, and so we'll see this word come up as we talk through this strategy of how to manage your content. So let's talk about the first stage. This is what a phase that we would call the request phase, and think of it simply as a form that will kind of guide your content. We want to have 4 things that every piece of content focuses on, and maybe it's helpful to say web page. We want to know who owns that page, what is its purpose, do we need any sort of resources in order to create that content, and how do we know when the content has been successful with the user? And the nice thing about this phase is if we do this correctly, we don't have to come back to this stage, and it helps all of the rest of our work run smoother. So we need to focus and follow these steps, and it may be a lot of work at the front, but it will help us be more productive at the back end. Requiring ownership. This is basically saying who is responsible for this web page? Which department does this belong to? And when we talk about using the metadata, we can include that piece of information directly on that web page. And again, it won't show up for the user, but it will help us when we're running reports and when we're searching for, why is this page outdated, then we would know who it belongs to. When we talk about its business purpose, that knowing what the purpose is for that web page helps us know if someone is searching for information, if that's where they need to belong. Guiding the purpose of content will help us help the user and help us know how to connect the user to that information. We do need to know if there are any sort of education resources needed to create that content. In other words, what kind of work do we have to put into writing that content? And let's know that up front so that we can make sure we have all of the staff that we need, all of the time that we need, and let's make a formal commitment so that we can carry out this project. And that may also require what kind of resources do we need to follow the other stages of this content governance that we're talking about, this overall way of guiding our content. And finally, how do we know if the page has been successful? One example would be if we set up a logic in our content system and said, if this page has not been opened in 5 months, then let's archive it, or let's delete it, or at least let's flag it and see if we should archive or delete it or change something on it. So we need to have some sort of way of measuring whether or not a page has been successful. When we look at Carleton College, we see an example of one page within their website. This is for their alumni reunion, and in talking about those 4 areas, Who owns this page? Well, obviously it's within the alumni department, and we would probably even say that there's a committee or one person that's responsible for the reunion itself. So we could name that. We could declare what its purpose is, which is, of course, to gather alumni at some location, and that can help us guide when people are looking for, how do alumni get together. We can say whether or not it's been successful and whether or not people actually come to the reunion, and if they visit this page and if they find the information that they need. And we can also determine whether or not we need any sort of research or extra staff in order to put this page together, which in this case we probably would. The next stage is actually creating the content, which is really what we think about with a website. It's the most fun stage. And we should remember two things about creating content. Let's determine who has access to that particular web page. Even if it's not for security reasons. Sometimes we don't need every page to be accessible to every person, and that will actually help our website to be easier for someone to look through it if there's not a bunch of extra things that don't apply to their particular interest. This is the Drupal backdoor of a website where they actually have a login, and so they can narrow down different pages based on which type of person is logging in and what they would see. And then we also want to assign that particular web page or that content a workflow. This helps us have some conformity to it. Do we have legal issues? Do we have editorial requirements? When we get to the stage of managing it, there are certain things we want to make sure that we know for each page. So we want to have some kind of workflow that every page runs through so that it's consistent, which is manage. This is not dealing with each individual page. This is dealing with the website as a whole. Who owns that page, and have they cleaned it up in a while? And surprisingly enough, running a report and looking at if pages are even assigned to someone actually removes the largest part of useless information. So it's important for us to do this, but we only need to do it quarterly or as needed. Kind of think of this as the bird's eye view of what's going on in your website. It's not your individual pages, it's just an overall managing what's happening on the site. And the final step would be retiring information, of course. We need to get rid of information that should be archived or deleted. And again, that can be done by following our metadata. Who does it belong to? We could put in an expiration date for that particular page. We could say that, this needs to be checked in a certain number of months. When we look at, again, Carleton's website, within their visual arts department, they archived an event. It didn't need to be deleted because someone might want to refer to it in the future, but they did need to archive it, and they may have set this to archive on April 16th, which would be just after the exhibit finished. So following these 4 life cycles of making the request of the information, creating it and managing it, and then retiring it will help us overall follow a content governance, and that will make our website easy to navigate, have good information, and make it easy for people to find what they're actually looking for. And that creates a happy user and a happy inputter on the other side.